So Dr. John Sullivan and I are sitting here having a conversation for Dice about metrics and hiring. Hi, John. Thanks for coming in. What's the biggest challenge for internal HR departments if they don't sort of apply metrics to the hunt for kind of ideal job candidates?
Well, I wouldn't use the term efficiency, so it's impact. Is if you hire LeBron, you're going to win a championship, and if you hire John, you're not. So the business impact increases by knowing what source works. Even we call it right day recruiting. So I was going to hire someone from Hillary's campaign a week ago. They weren't interested, but they changed their mind. So right day matters. So it's the quality of hire, what I call on-the-job performance. And if you look at sales jobs, so they're already measured. So you can say, okay, I can use this source or this source. Which one produces salespeople that sell more? So that's a business impact. So that's what we found is that, like if you give time to fill to an executive, they don't give a crap. And so money is what they care about, revenue. So if you say the person will produce 10% more if you do this, then it works.
But for most companies, it seems like they've been already following a sort of a different process in terms of how they hire and so on, and many of them probably haven't heard of any sort of metric-based hiring or anything like that. How does a hiring manager or an internal recruiter kind of kick off that conversation with the CEO or the CFO or whoever kind of has ultimate sign-off? I mean, how do you kind of broach the topic and then sort of convince them that this is the future, this is the way forward?
So there's only one way. It turns out the language of business is money. And you can say we care about people, they're our most important assets, but it's total bull. It's about the money. So what I find and what I do is I go in and say, you're losing $100 million. And by the way, your inventory control program is saving you $2 million, but this is $100 million, because if you hire a salesperson that's 10% worse than the average, it's going to cost you millions of dollars. It's just a fact. And if you hire an idiot and they stay, it's going to cost you millions. So what I found is you need to quantify. You need to say, by using a cheap source. So does this make sense? Well, we saved money and used monster.ugly. And as a result, our salespeople sell 10% less. Was that a good investment? No, it wasn't. So if you said I want to save money about hiring LeBron, I would say, no, spend extra money. Cost per hire, would not calculate it, wouldn't tell anyone. Performance of the hire, I would. So if you just say better performer, they don't care. Show them the ring, they understand. So the money is the ring. So in revenue jobs, it's easy to, it's already measured. So you just say, look, let's take those jobs. You've been using whatever, let's use Dice or whatever it is. And when they sell more and you quantify it, then the cost becomes irrelevant. We're going to use Dice because it produces better performers.
So there's a formula to it, like a hard formula that you can apply and spits out.
It always ends in money. So even time, hire slow, who cares? But it turns out top performers are gone in 10 days, so you have to hire fast. So it's all data driven, but it results in the money. Because if we literally said time to fill, cost per hire, they glaze over. They don't care.
Sure.
When you say $1 million, they understand, because all day they talk about millions of dollars. It's finance million or marketing million, but it's millions of dollars. So it turns out the highest impact thing in HR is recruiting. It can increase revenue by 3 times, not 3%, but 3 times. So we have data showing that of all the things you do, engagement, no offense, not going to affect the bottom line, but recruiting does, and then it doesn't affect it as much for secretary jobs. So like in football, quarterback, let me see, they pay him $10 million a year and there's 2 backups. Must be important. Kicker, they pay him $300,000, there's no backups. So why recruit for all jobs equally when there are some jobs that have a huge revenue impact?
I mean, that certainly makes sense. I mean, it should be sort of that kind of that hard quantitative eye.
But they don't do it. That's the issue. It's like, why not? You know, everybody else does it. So when you buy a Xerox machine, come on, they run numbers and it's, you know, volume, quality, all this stuff. But we do not measure quality. We don't measure failure rate. So the failure rate of new hires is 40 to 50% in 18 months. That's an incredible high failure rate. But no one measures it. So it's not like quality of hire is important. But how about quality of failure? Because that might be Volkswagen. It might be some guy messing up the carburetor is going to cost you billions of dollars. So we don't connect the dots. So it should be they perform well and none of them turn out to be mass murderer, Charles Manson. But there's no loop. And I'm sure there isn't with DICE. It's like, oh, by the way, don't hire that person again or that school again because they failed miserably.
Do you think the rise of, because you go to all these companies and basically every single aspect of the business, everybody's talking about data analytics and big data and so on. Do you think the rise of big data has kind of opened up people more or made them more sort of receptive to this idea that you should actually quantify things? I mean, do you think that that kind of generalized interest in using data analytics for everything kind of has also sort of had an impact on the recruiting scene, on the hiring scene?
So you don't know many recruiters. No, it hasn't made any difference at all. Because one, there's no big data in recruiting. It's all little baby data. And so it's not that hard, but they hear big data and what I call in recruiting, we have metrics. So you can tell the boss, we use metrics, but they're silly metrics. And they don't use them to make decisions. So you can report your turnover rate was 20%, but no one does anything. So what we found is one, the dollar. Second, they want to know what to do. So you say you have turnover rate like this, millions of dollars, but they don't know the right actions. So a manager just goes, oh my God, I have cancer, I'll try something stupid. You have to give them the prescribed answers and say within, so I do it like a Zagat, if you know a Zagat book, it's like 20% chance this will work, it costs this amount of money, and then you'll know by this. And so you need to give them prescribed solutions. So what we found is metrics don't change behavior. It's not my fault. You give people metrics, they don't open it or they fall asleep on it. When they finally do agree, oh my God, we better do something, they do the wrong thing or they do nothing. So they just wait because no one told them this is the cure for cancer. So that's what I find with recruiting. If you ask 10 people, how do you improve quality of hire? 9 of them wouldn't know. And so therefore, even the metrics that work, all it does is alert you to say, damn, I better do something. But then they they give someone a raise. No, a shitty job with more money is a shitty job. And so it doesn't affect retention at all, except now they know that you don't know what to do, so they're really well-paid, frustrated people.
But how do you change that behavior? I mean, if you're giving them this and then they're not simply not, if you've led them to the water but they're not drinking, how do you make them drink?
Well, you buy dice. It's the money. I go back to the money. You have to. You got to go around HR people, go right to the manager and say, "This is costing you this amount of money." Flipping a coin about retention is costing you this amount of money. And by the way, there's a solution that works every time, and it takes 22 minutes, and here it is. So, it's always comes back to the money. To me, is if I go around HR because they don't use the money. They say our turnover rate or time to fill. But if you say $22 million, operating managers know right away, CFOs know right, COOs, even CEOs. So the same speech I gave today, I can give the CEOs. They get it in a minute. It's like, why aren't we doing that? Someone needs to be fired because it's just marketing or finance or supply chain. It's no different.
So for internal hiring, obviously this works. Does your advice change at all in terms of metrics when it comes to third-party recruiters and outside recruiters?
Well, I used to be a chief talent officer, so I would have third-party recruiters say, well, we hire better people, more people, faster, whatever the hell it was. It just turned out not to be true. So you have to have metrics. So I'm not in love with the source. It's what source produces the better performer. And so when you look at third-party people, they're worse at metrics. I don't know why, but we have relationships. We have a database of 20 million people. Yes, so does the phone book. So I don't know. Knowing people has no value to me. Referral vendors who come in and say, well, I'll scrape all the data from your employees. No, it's the relationship that you know them and you know something about them. So, I find that they're worse at metrics. They're certainly worse at quantifying, and they never do quality of hire, so that's the one. Show me they're going to perform better. This was baseball. It would take 12 seconds. We're going to hire a pitcher. They're going to be a great pitcher. Well, what's their ERA? And you measure it after 6 weeks and 6 months and 6 years. And if you got it wrong, no one would ever listen. And so this happens in Moneyball. Your recommendations, no. They're discounted. Like he says, this person, 27% off because he's wrong all the time. We don't have that. We never checked with managers, are you any good? And some recent work by HireView actually showed that as many as some managers fail after just an interview, get it right 80% of the time, but some of them get it wrong 80% of the time. That's an unbelievable failure rate. So Google did that study and says, do people that think they're good at interviewing any good at it? Turns out they're not. And so it's the fundamental, come on, resumes, 80-something% of people lie on resumes, but we use them as some sort of currency. Everyone lies on resumes. If you don't lie on resumes, there's something wrong with you. Oh, how's it going at Wells Fargo? Oh, it's going great.
Okay.
And how are you doing? You just got out of prison, I see. How are you doing? So people telling the best truth, lying, it's just horrible. So I don't, I look at Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, how they hired? I said, we have this big ass problem and it's sitting on your desk, and the first day you start, you're gonna have to solve this big ass problem. Why don't you walk me through the steps? And when the person goes, I wouldn't know what to do, then they don't get hired. And when they solve the problem, instead of interview notes, which I throw away, I have your answer, but I have 4 other answers. That's tremendously valuable to the business. And when you work for my competitor and you say, we've already solved that, that's worth millions of dollars. So it's competitive intelligence. I don't know. I know why to interview people, to give them a problem and to steal their secrets.
Yeah.
But I don't know anybody in recruiting or especially third party that says, no, this is an opportunity. So I had a friend, he would purposely interview someone from the competitor, and I said, why? To steal their secrets.
I mean, it also seems that, especially for very highly technical roles in technology, a lot of interviewing has now veered towards whiteboarding and so on, specifically to force people to confront those big problems. Like, how would you actually build this relational database if we were to hire you at this point? And a lot of candidates get angry because they think they're basically, that they're being asked for free work or free labor. And that, the business is essentially going to take whatever they say and then exactly use it as part of their larger roll-up in terms of solving their own strategic challenges. So, it's an interesting kind of tightrope that recruiters and hiring managers maybe have to work in terms of trying to ascertain, obviously, where the candidate, is capable of dealing with the challenges and the problems that are going to be thrown at them, but also sort of making sure the candidates aren't, I guess, off-put in a certain way about questions.
Pay them. What's the big deal?
Okay.
So it's been done before. Top coder, they steal the code at the end. Everybody knows that, but there's a reasonable chance of getting a job. Competition, some people just want to know how good they are, and so they get that opportunity. But I don't know, it's just so simple. But I've been in this field for a while. We used to pay people to apply for a job. $25, it wasn't a whole lot. Free Starbucks card if you apply for a card. So I don't know. It's like, if I'm going to steal your ideas, pay for it. It's fine. Here's $1,000. You'd be amazed that the line would be showing up if it was $1,000 per one. So I don't know. It's like, if you're getting value, pay for it. It's okay. But our model is broken. We treat candidates like crap. And so we're so used to it, it's like, no, you're going to help me out. So, by the way, at Agilent, the way we hired people, we hired you for a weekend. So yeah, you could bullshit on the whiteboard, but when you worked for us for a weekend, we kind of knew your stuff. So it cost us money, but we made a lot less mistakes because they were good people, like Caltech people, really smart, but they couldn't work in a team.
Is the tech industry, does it sort of fall under the umbrella of the generalized advice you've given about metrics, or is there anything different about kind of the tech industry, specifically with regard to kind of metrics and recruiting, that differs it from manufacturing or other kind of industries out there?
Unfortunately, they're no better at doing metrics except Google. So Google is a machine, and they actually say all human resource decisions will be the equivalent of engineering decisions. No one else says that. And their chairman of the board says we measure engineering, productivity, and innovation or something. And so it's like, no, these people are fanatics. So, people at Facebook are really good at hiring, but they don't have data, they don't have anything. Apple, you're lucky for work for Apple, shut up and take the job. They actually lie to you. When you apply for a job at Apple, they won't tell you what it is.
No.
Because you give it away as a trade secret. Yeah. So it's the value of the person is, so a person at, if Facebook brings in $1.9 million, I would bet manufacturing not so much, at Kodak not so much. So that's the difference, because the value is so great that there's a reason to be more scientific. But Google hired people with grade point average 3.8, or you couldn't work there. And then somebody ran an analysis and said, by the way, grade doesn't predict success. And now they dropped it. Not just lowered it, dropped it. So that's what's amazing to me, is that no one ran the analysis to say, it turns out that not all good basketball players are tall, not all good people went to the right school. Steve Jobs, come on, look, Steve Jobs, how about that Microsoft guy, Oracle guy, Dell guy, they all dropouts. So,
Yeah.
and Zuckerberg, my favorite, is like, not only did he drop out, but he cheated his friends.
Yeah.
So forget the ethics, forget the business school. Here's the guy, and it's number 5 most valuable firm. So the market has not picked it up, but there are a few firms that have. And once they start quantifying the value of individual jobs, so all jobs are not equal, and then all top performers. So Google calculated a top performer 300 times more valuable, an innovator, than an average person. That's not a little number.
No.
So when someone who's an average performer says, I want to come in late, go to hell. But when Steve Jobs says, you know, I invent better at midnight, hey, good for you. How about you work at midnight? So we have to learn those things, is that productivity, when's the best time? And it turns out people know better than managers. So when you get the most productivity, when you get the most innovation, and I haven't found it pervasive in high tech. I wish it was, but it's Google. These people are unique, and they know stuff, and they reveal it, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. If you did this at Apple, they would fire you. If you told the secrets that they reveal, you'd be fired.
And they adapt. I mean, Google used to ask those weird brain teasers, and they chop those out.
Zero productivity. So I always hated them. They're Microsoft does them. It's stupid. But they ran the numbers, and that's really it. It's like, do whatever, flip a coin, but run the numbers and see if it works. So schools went out, grades went out, even going to college went out, brain teasers went out, interviewing turns out to be a random mess. And so the things we build a foundation on, they all kind of don't work. So what works? Cook me a meal. We learned that. So orchestra people, they put them behind a screen. And because when they see who the sex or whatever, they hire differently. And I just learned the other day, they make women take their shoes off, because women, when they go to orchestra, wear high heels and they clunk. Yeah. Who would have thunk? But they figured that out. So to me, hiring cooks, those people get it right. You cook for an hour or so, then you come in for a weekend, and if you're any good, you get to stay. But there's no way they talk French to you or ask you about your knives. It's just crazy.
Yeah.